brings family together. It's love. Most of the time.
Gotta have good food. You can't have a party without good food.
Because it tastes really good, but also because it just brings people together, like whether you're going out to eat with your family or your friends.
It's all about the food.
Throughout the centuries, food has become more than a biological need. Today, all over the world, it is related to religion, identity, politics, socioeconomics, and the list continues. Culture is more than race and ethnicity. It is represented by a number of factors, food being one of them. Often these characteristics are passed down from generation to generation and may evolve as the culture evolves. The cuisine of certain cultures may also reflect geography, tradition, lifestyle, and even the wealth of a country.
Of course, I love Filipino food. I'm not being biased, but it's really good. You should try it.
The Filipino culture is one of the many cultures with a large emphasis on food. Filipinos love to eat. Filipinos are also very hospitable, which is shown in their generous and inviting attitudes when it comes to food. They will usually offer food upon entering their home and insist you eat a meal with them. Food and meals are often considered the basis of Filipino social life. Sharing meals and eating is a way to strengthen bonds and share time with family, friends, and the community. Many of the common foods today have a pre-existent history that dated all the way back to Chinese and Indian merchants arriving in the Philippines before it was even called the Philippines. Trade with the Chinese dynasty as well as with other neighboring countries also played an influence on culture and food. In the 16th century, the Spanish arrived in the Philippines bringing with them new ingredients and cooking styles, which resulted in a new influence on the Filipino culture and food. Much of the trading and Spanish influence occurred through the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade, whose route is pictured here. In the 1900s, when Americans began to arrive in the Philippines, as well as when Filipinos began to migrate to the United States, this interaction between the two cultures also played an influence in the Filipino culture. We still continue to see American influence over Filipino food, especially in the current Filipino fusion food truck craze. But before we get into those dishes, let's introduce the general Filipino cuisine. Some of the most common ingredients that are used in the Philippine cuisine include vinegar, soy sauce, Filipino lime, fish sauce, fish paste, and crushed ginger root. The Filipino cuisine has a broad base, which includes an abundance of natural food sources such as fruits like coconuts, mangoes, tamarind, and guavas. The Filipino cuisine also offers an abundance of vegetables. The Philippines location also plays a major role in the ingredients, especially including seafood, native fruits, and vegetables. During the pre-Hispanic era, much of the meat was wild game such as water buffalo, but now it is mostly pork, beef, and chicken. The Chinese introduced a number of staples into the Philippine cuisine, the most popular being soy sauce and fish sauce. The Chinese had also introduced their common cooking methods such as stir-frying, deep-frying, and making savory soup bases. The Filipinos incorporated the new Chinese cooking methods and ingredients, but added their own indigenous ingredients and styles as well. Spanish colonization and the trade interactions introduced dishes from the Iberian Peninsula, as well as North, Central, and South America. The main ingredients introduced were garlic, onions, and tomato, along with many other ingredients. Some of the popular dishes include variations of pancit, lumpia, chicken adobo, sisig, sinigang, and halo-halo. As we have learned, the Philippine cuisine has evolved over the past few centuries due to the large influence. Today, the Philippine cuisine has the acculturation and influence from other cultures, and the evolution still continues. An example of the ever-fluid Filipino food and culture is the growing Filipino fusion food, which can be found at both food trucks and restaurants such as White Rabbit Food Truck, Señor Sisig, and Be More Pacific. Some of the popular fusion dishes include the Sisig California burrito and Sisig tacos. Both of these implement Filipino sisig meat into a burrito or Mexican-style tacos. Here we have spaghetti, which is described as a Filipino-inspired pasta with its sweet and spicy marinara sauce and a fried egg. We also have a white chocolate champurrado, which is a Filipino twist on the classic Hispanic arroz con leche dessert.
And at the time, about a year and a half ago, there was no Filipino trips out. So we said, hey, why don't we incorporate Filipino meats in Mexican and American dishes? So that's what we kind of created with White Ranch.
These Filipino fusion food trucks are examples of a third space. A third space is a gray area between two perceived distinct concepts, in this case cultures, that have the potential for new practices and expressions of identities and culture. These food trucks provide a hybrid of two cultures fusing together and developing new dishes. Creation of this third space seems to question cultural gatekeepers who are people that keep and hold the traditions of a culture. They are the group which defines the trends and acceptable behavior and tendencies in the current culture. By creating the third space, fusion food is drifting away from the strictly traditional tendencies. The history of Filipino food is also important because through the ever-evolving Filipino food, we can see the fluidity of the entire culture simply through the fluidity of its food.
Well, Filipino cuisine is, as I can say, very promising.
I think it's happening. I find it very interesting. You know, it has a lot of different influences. Nako, napakalaki ng future ng Filipino food.
The boundaries of race, ethnicity, class, sexuality, culture, and so on appear to be stable, but in actuality, this is not true. All of these things change over time and are shaped by social and political climate. In the example of Filipino dishes, they continue to change with outside influences, just as Filipino culture does and just as nearly every culture does.
Had a lot of things to say. Had a lot of points to make. Put me down a walk, sweet day.